Let's talk about the what I'm calling the spectacle of the funeral on Saturday, because I thought it was quite magnificent the way it was handled. A lot of people watched it in awe, I think, because it's the kind of thing that here in Britain we do rather well.
I thought it was overwhelmingly extraordinary event,
Yes,
and I think it was hard not to be deeply moved and equally proud of Britain.
yes.
Everybody's trashing us, and yet we are superior in so many ways, dignified,
Mm.
meticulous. I thought it was just extraordinary.
Yes, I mean, so many things stood out for me. I mean, the Green Land Rover, for one, was just a fantastic touch. Watching the cars going slowly, watching the members of the royal family. I mean, I must admit, I felt a tinge of sadness for them when they had to wear the masks, and much of sadness for the Queen sitting on her own. But a lot of people focusing on the end, when it would appear that Harry and William had a kind of conversation as if it was almost enabled, if you like, by Kate.
Yes, it's very interesting because sometimes life changes on the head of a pin,
Mm.
really. All the royal family were supposed to go back in cars, and
Right.
each one had a separate car waiting. And at the very last moment, Prince Charles shooed all the cars away and decided to walk the 8 minutes back to Windsor Castle itself.
Right.
So everyone else had to do the same. And from that, much may come. Even if a little bit comes, it'll be brilliant. Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, directly walked up to Prince Harry and asked him whatever it was. You know, she was chatting, she looked lively, she didn't look resentful. My goodness, they've been so rude about her, but she rose above it with enormous dignity. Her body language was friendly, natural, relaxed. And then Prince William, her husband, joined them. And she, quite remarkably, stepped down into the curb,
Yeah.
leaving the two brothers on the pavement, and gradually stepped back and talked to Sophie, Countess of Wessex, and Prince
Yes, it was very
Edward.
subtle, but it was noticeable, wasn't it?
It was very subtle, and she kept looking just to see that they were okay. But, you know, the hardest thing is to break the ice, isn't it? You can get conversations going in different directions, but this broke the ice and enabled them to talk on a very moving and a very sunny day. It was quite extraordinary. And we'll have to see what happens. It was said that Prince Harry was going to go straight back to Los Angeles and his wife and little Archie immediately after the service. But it's believed he's still there, and he may stay for the Queen's birthday.
Well, he
on
should,
Wednesday.
really. I mean, it's only Wednesday, isn't it? Her birthday.
Well, he absolutely should, but there have been so many things that he absolutely should have done, which he hasn't, that you don't know what his decision making will be. But I hope that there can be some sort of rapprochement between him and the family. I mean, some of them wouldn't speak to him. Princess Anne and Sophie wouldn't even acknowledge him. And I don't say I blame them at all, but if some sort of something can come out of it, at least it can be civil.
Yes.
I don't think it will never be the same again, because even if Prince William could forgive him, which I think will be very hard, because he was also very, very rude about Catherine. It's hard to know whether you can trust them if you think that he might tell Meghan, as one might tell your wife, and then she'll immediately go and make a PR effort out of it.
Well, I have to say, Angela, I'm assuming when he does go back, and let's hope he does stay for the Queen's birthday, because I've said before, the longer he stays here, the better it is for the relationships to heal, really. If he rushes back, and no matter what happens when he does get back, I'm sure he will be in a very seriously long debriefing session with Madame Markle, who will no doubt want to know every single cough and spit of what happened, what everybody said, you know, whether they looked at him the wrong way, or whether somebody was unnaturally ungracious towards him. Because I noticed that he didn't look that comfortable, you know, throughout, until that moment when William spoke to him. He was walking inn where Peter Phillips was between him and William, and he was kind of not. He wasn't walking like a member of the royal family. I know this might sound a bit weird, but he was walking sort of in a rather casual manner rather than a very sort of, upright manner. And when he came out of the chapel, he was holding the order of service in his hand, and he started sort of tapping his thigh with it, which showed me that he was not really taking it seriously almost.
Well, tapping that program on his side was very common with Harry if he felt very tense. I noticed that in the year plus that I was following him around. When he felt tense and uncomfortable, he would tap his leg, whatever in his hand or just with his hand. So that was very interesting. But I think that he seemed to deliberately try to take it casually, as if I'm not part of this lot, but I've got to walk. And he was looking all around him. Everyone else looked straight ahead. It was masterful, really, and very moving how they were concentrating on going towards the chapel. But he was sort of, oh, look, that looks nice. Oh, I'm over there. And perhaps I've, oh, yes, I can. And it was just a very extraordinary way of behaving. And I hope that being through that experience of the funeral, he might actually touch some of his past and not feel so resentful.
Well, I must admit, I watched over the weekend as well a programme which had been made some years ago, Prince Philip in his own words, where he drove around the grounds, you've probably seen it, of Windsor Great Park and the whole kind of edifice. And I'd never seen the Victoria Mausoleum before. I didn't even know that was there. It was really interesting. And I think a lot of people have found over the course of this weekend and maybe last week as well, that Prince Philip was a fascinating character who did an awful lot of good for not only the country, but also for Windsor itself and for the kind of the environment.
Yes, I mean, he became more remarkable the more you read about him, from his wretched childhood where he really wasn't parented properly, and his success in the Navy and his broad range. I mean, he had 11,000 books, I believe, no, 1,000 books on religion and 12,000 books at all. But he didn't like people to know he was such an avid reader and so profound. So he kept it all to himself. I didn't know he painted for a long time. Right. But he and Prince Charles had a great common interest in painting. Prince Charles more delicate with watercolors, and him more formal and making bigger statements. And I think that he has done so much for the country with the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme. I had no idea it had moved to 140 countries.
Yes.
And so many people spoke out about how it saved their lives or changed their lives or gave them confidence or kept them out of prison. It was absolutely astonishing. And all the beautiful modern artwork he collected for the Royal Collection. And generally, he was a modernizer. I didn't realize that either, that he wanted the monarchy to move forward. And I think this funeral is a way of keeping together both the past and holding on to tradition and being able to move and change according to the year.
Yes.
I thought it was absolutely something to always remember.
Yes, and I think he also comes across as the glue that was holding it all together. And you wonder without him, and obviously he hasn't been himself in recent months, so perhaps it's already that he was less of an influence. But I mean, he does seem to have been a very unifying force amongst all of the difficulties of the last few years.
Yes, very much so. I mean, when he married Princess Elizabeth, as she then was, she had to put every effort into doing her duty, and he was left to decide what happened with the family. And she was quite happy with that. He chose the schools. He made all sorts of decision makings. He brought proper kitchens in. He made sure that things were modern, and computers he brought in. I mean, he was responsible for all those things that might seem small, but the royal family does not rush ahead, and he made sure that it stayed modern. But I think it was very significant that Prince Charles made his speech after the death, which was saying how much he loved his father and how important he was, and then taking on the fact that he would now be father to the family. And I think his movement of walking back to Buckingham, walking back to Windsor, was actually very important in that.
Yes.
And they all followed him. Nobody could get in the car. They followed him. And it seemed that already he was taking on the position of following his father.
Yes, I think that's right. And as far as the future goes, I saw over the weekend pieces written about Charles wanting to have a sort of summit meeting, which will be chaired more or less by him, but ably assisted by William. And where that goes is difficult to know, isn't it? I mean, it sounds like they're looking at reducing some of the constitutional work that the royal family does. It looks as if they're thinning it down a little bit more. What do you think is likely to be the end result of all of that?
Well, Prince Charles has wanted for a very long time to cut the monarchy down, to save costs and to make people be worth the money that they got from the taxpayer. And I imagine that might be when Harry and Meghan are ditched from being members of the royal family. And I think the outer edge, which the Queen has wanted to keep together for a very long time, for sentimental and reasons that at her age she didn't really particularly want change, which is understandable.
Yeah.
But he wants to change, and I think he will do that. He will also accompany the Queen. She's said that she's going to be there opening Parliament in May the 11th. And Prince Charles will be accompanying her. And I think although she wants to do her duties, she will step back even more. It'll be quite hard to come back after the pandemic and all the isolation. And I don't think she will fight Prince Charles anymore. In fact, she'll be grateful for him taking over and making, I imagine, quite big decisions on behalf of the royal family.
Yes, I'm sure that's true. And she'll always be presumably some kind of advisory individual anyway for whatever goes on. But I mean, it'll be quite a big moment, will it not, if Prince Charles opens Parliament perhaps in the autumn?
Yeah, I think we can't rush forward because we don't know, and she's a very determined woman, and I think that's one of the duties that she can manage, although it does worry me that the crown is tremendously heavy and she usually gets a headache after it.
Yeah.
And I think that something must be sorted about that. I don't think she has to be uncomfortable in any way.
Maybe they could make a replica with some lighter materials.
A quick replica. Yes, that would be a very good idea. Something light that looks similar.
Yes.
But I think the relationship between Prince Charles and his parents has got much better in the last few years. Partly thanks to Camilla, who has made him so happy that he's not sort of whinging or negative. And I think that he will be much needed now, as will William. I think William will back him up, so their relationship has got better.
Yes.
And I'm sure that the monarchy will survive and be strong. And William said that he wants to follow his grandfather's footsteps and the decisions that he made and his dedication to duty. And I found that very comforting for him to say that about his grandfather, that he will make lots of changes, but that he will also follow the decency that's within the royal family.
And it's interesting as well, because I've spoken to quite a lot of people who were watching it and who thought that it was nice that Harry was there, but it was also nice that he was there on his own in some ways, because Meghan might have changed the whole thing if she had been there.
I think everybody felt a great sigh of relief that she wasn't coming for whatever reason. And her comments that one of the reasons was not the fact that she was pregnant, but the fact that she didn't want to hog all the attention. And the arrogance.
I mean, can you imagine?
The arrogance of that means he still has no idea what the royal family is all about. I think it also enabled Harry to be a bit more like himself. I think he worries so much about pleasing Meghan that he just wants to say and behave in the way that she would like. And here he could be a little bit of himself, if he remembers what that is, of course.
Well, this is the thing. I did wonder. I mean, because Windsor was so important to the family, and that was also made clear in this documentary that I watched about Prince Philip. You know, to talk in the terms that he and she talked about, looking at that beautiful setting of, you know, Frogmore Cottage, Windsor Castle, you know, the Great Walk, you know, the long road up to the castle, the beautiful grounds, the deer. I mean, everything about Windsor is just fantastic. I mean, the idea that you would complain about living there, particularly in a house filled with servants and filled with money and filled with pretty much anything you wanted, is bizarre, isn't it?
Well, the fact is that Meghan didn't feel comfortable at all from the word go. She hated it. She felt very depressed, as we later discovered. And so she would never be happy anywhere, or however many staff she had, or anything else. She wanted to get back to America. But actually, the other thing that'd be interesting about Prince Harry is how much did he think about the wedding? Because, of course, the wedding was held in the same St. George's Chapel. Not even 3 years ago, less than 3 years ago. And I wonder what he thought, looking back on that. He must have done while he was there in the chapel.
Yes, I'm sure. Absolutely right. So what's your sort of your sense, Angela, of what happens over the course of the next year? I know I asked you this before the funeral, in terms of the Queen's ability to continue as the Queen, and I mean, everyone says to me, oh, you know, she doesn't do abdication, we don't do abdication, she won't abdicate. But it might not be quite as simple as that, but surely, as you've said, I mean, she's not a young woman, she can't do an awful lot of the heavy lifting, if you like. Charles is going to have to be more involved, isn't he?
Yes, I think certainly so. I think she very much is turning her attention now to the Platinum Jubilee, which is next year. I mean, that is a huge, important event, and I think she will want to be there. I think it will be very hard for her to step down altogether, because this is her life. And what will she do without that? So she can keep herself busy and she enjoys it. She can do lots of things via Zoom, but I think Prince Charles will take over, as you say, the heavy lifting. And good. I mean, I spent over a year with him to write about him for his 70th birthday. And I was amazed how many people appreciated what he was doing, because the implication is that nobody does, but that's not true. And how he will be as an heir will seem very, very different to how he is as very close to the throne and running a lot of it. I think he will show great experience and understanding, and want for the monarchy to continue in the dignified way that it has.
And what about Harry? He goes back to California at some point, whether it's tomorrow or say next week. When do you think he'll be back?
Well, he's supposed to come back in the summer to unveil the statue of his late mother, Princess Diana. He and William spent from 2017 until very recently sorting out what they actually wanted. It was quite difficult for them to agree, but there's nothing wrong with that. And it will he come? Will Meghan come with him? Will she have had her child? We don't know how pregnant she is, of course. And will that be another opportunity for conversation? I think it will. I think a little ice has been cracked, no more than that. And that next time, if he does come over, and he really wants to do that, I mean, he's adored his mother. If he really wants to come over, there will be more time, a more positive thing to do, to have more conversations. But I don't think for a minute it will ever get back to what it was.
No, I can't see that, but we shall watch, as we said before, with great interest. Angela, thank you very much indeed.